Today you are entering another dimension. A dimension not of sight nor sound, but of reduced expectations. You are now entering the Pocket Zone.
Hey, look what just dropped by! It's the Pocket Go! Hey, you know what I really like about it? The front of the box! Pocket Go! The right side of the box supports external micro SD card. GBA, SNES, MD, that's Megadrive. SMS, Sega Master System. PCE, NES, GBC, GB, NEOGEO, and MAME are all supported. Headphone, save games. Full screen original resolution display. You know, that's pretty much impossible if you say it's original because like all those systems had different resolutions. Well, most of them did. Anyway, whatever. Screen brightness adjustment. At least the Game Boy Advance did from the Game Boy and the game. And anyway, we're not going to get into this. Screen brightness adjustment. That's exciting. 1000 milliamp rechargeable lithium battery. Battery life's 3 to 4 hours. 2.4 inch IPS screen, which was the big selling point of the Bittboy back in the day. The left side of the box says Pocket Go. The top of the box is very boring. As for the bottom of the box, fills my heart with woe. The back of the box. Use your imagination. See your own games on this tabula rasa. Wow. Let's open this thing. Boxophiles will be happy to know that this is one solid box. Good job, Pocket Go. Alright, let's take a look. First thing I was really surprised about is how tiny this sucker is. It is way smaller than I thought it was going to be. It is tiny. It is truly pocket-sized. It does not use like an RS-97 mold. It is like its own thing. Like, I've gone Valley. There's also a SanDisk in here. It's an 8 gig. So I don't know if I'm supposed to place it in there. Oh well, we'll take a look in a bit. What else do we got in here? We've got a little basic functions sheet. That's kind of cool. Basic functionalities. What else?
Edited for your sanity.
Look at that, we got a micro SD to USB adapter. If you don't have a micro SD reader on your laptop, you can use this guy. Very nice. We also have this charging cable. Micro USB, very nice. There's also these 4 little guys in case you want your Pocket Go to look like a Super Famicom. I'm totally installing these. For the record, from a packaging point, this is freaking brilliant. Very nice. Classy. Thumbs up. Alright, let's take a look at the Pocket Go. Alright, the D-pad. I don't know how to feel about it yet. It feels a little bit lightweight, and it feels a little bit like it might be prone to locking. We'll see. Sometimes they feel like this and then they play okay, but it's got a flag on the field. Alright, got a select and a start button. Those feel great. A, B, X, and Y buttons. A little bit plasticky, but okay. Vent in the front indicates that there might be a speaker in the front. That would be good. Yes, it appears that the speaker is indeed in the front. Also has these 2 shoulder buttons. Those shoulder buttons feel frickin' marvelous. Really, they're nice. There is a reset button here on the top instead of having one of those recessed ones. This is something I just saw in a Famiclone recently. It has got a headphone jack and a separate AV out jack. That's really pretty nice. SD card, of course, micro SD card reader. And looking on the left side, we've got your on off. Bottom has nothing, very clean. Right side has the volume control knob, I like that. much better than the single button or the double button situation that some of them have. And here's the bottom of the unit. Very nice and clean. Alright, here is the Pocket Go next to the LDK. Very nice. And here it is next to the RS-97. As you can see, it's quite a bit smaller, and this smaller translates into pocketability. So there is a sizing advantage here. It does help it fit into the pocket much easier. If you are curious as to whether my button colors are correct because it doesn't match the LDK, here is a Super Nintendo controller, or I'm sorry, a Super Famicom controller, which has these colors, and I made mine to match it. So if there's any arguments there, that should resolve that. That said, feel free to put the colors in any order you want. It's your device. Have some fun. Alright, let's pop the TF card in here and get playing. Hey, I'm gonna bet you I'm gonna need to add my own games. It's been like that with the last couple. There. Well, if it needs games, I'll add them. I don't know if you can see it, but you know what's really sexy? That little lightning bolt. That looks cool. Nice.
Warning. Unexpected time warp.
Alright folks, it's only been a second for you, but it's been well over a month for me, and I've been playing this quite a bit and have some opinions about it. Most of them are pretty positive, but it's definitely not a perfect device, but I found that in testing with friends and family and sometimes random people off the street, people generally like it, and I can understand why. But let's go a little bit through the 101 basics and explaining why this isn't going to be a huge long video like I generally do on these. The first thing is that the minute you get it, assuming it's got the default firmware, the stock firmware, you might as well just get rid of it. It is a flaming wreckage. Jerison got this before me by a couple weeks, and he was telling me how bad the menus were. And I was like, get out of here. There's just no way it's that bad. You're over-exaggerating. No, nah, he was not over-exaggerating. They are that bad. The emulators don't work quite properly. Even the right and left bumpers are reversed in the menu system. So you're going to absolutely want to upgrade this to a custom firmware pretty much right away. If you've never done that, I've got an RS-97 guide for this, and it's basically exactly the same thing except you use a different ROM. In fact, it is the same thing except you use a different firmware file. I don't know why I said ROM there, but meant firmware file. Alright, the bad thing about the custom firmware is no video output at this point. It probably will be enabled in the future, but at this time I can't use an AV cable with this, so I'm stuck to playing on the device. Now, most of the time I do anyway. I only use it for recording, but that means I can't use it for recording this video. So I'll be recording off the screen, which sucks. I don't like it, so I'm not gonna show as much, but I am gonna talk quite a bit, as you could probably tell already. Alright, so dot number one, that's the first page of the menu system. We got Bard Commander, yeah, whatever. Anybody know how to pronounce that one? M Player. And we got Wizwrite, WQX, and Explorer. Basically, what we have here is a couple of notepad type things. We've got but I'm sorry, I shouldn't call it a notepad type thing. It's a reader, like a book reader if you want that kind of thing. There's two media players in here of different kinds, so you can play MP3s and videos on here. And that's actually a good thing. Oop, I went to sleep, I'll be darned. So are you probably. Anyway, it's actually a good thing. This isn't a bad thing to watch media on because the screen's pretty nice, so you might actually want to do it. Then of course we've got Midnight Commander and the Explorer for going around the file system, which is pretty useful. Not as useful as it is on some systems, but in this case, if you want to move files around, it's more than adequate. Here we have the emulators. I'm going to come back to these, but Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, NES, SNES. SNES is kind of a mixed bag. Again, Jerison was telling me about the fact they downscaled the sound a little bit, and they did. It's a lower quality sound than many of the emulators use, but you don't really notice it because the speaker is pretty small, so it's not a huge deal. But just note, SNES isn't perfect. Sega Master System, the Megadrive, Atari 2600 runs those great. Lynx, PC Engine, Arcade, this is MAME, and I've got a bunch of MAME ROMs on here, so I'm going to play a couple MAME games for you. NEOGEO, and then I got Gameboy, DOSBox, I should have mentioned, Pokemon, WonderSwan, PlayStation 1, it's limited, but it's better than I thought it would be. So I'll show you a game off of that. And then of course we got Game Boy again and Game Boy Advance, rumble functions. Oops. Went a page over. These of course are the built-in games that are made specifically for the Dingu operating system, or OpenDingux, however you want to go with it. One thing I'm going to note, most of the games work just fine. Some of them are a little bit slow, which is kind of weird, but it does have Cave Story on it, which is one of the greatest games of all time. You definitely should check it out if you get one of these. And another thing is Rise of the Triad absolutely doesn't work. It didn't work on the original firmware, doesn't work on this one. Don't know what's up with that, but it's kind of sad because I really would have liked to have played Rise of the Triad on this. Next we have settings, and there's a number of battery settings. That's a big deal to have. Screen timeout, CPU settings. You don't generally need to set this. Many of the emulators set them themselves. Just note that. Next we have skins. Yes, you can change the backgrounds. That's very nice. You know, about whatever. This is super important. If I didn't mention it earlier, this gets like a dirty bit message like all the frickin' time on startup, unless you power it down properly using this function here. I'm going to just hit it and power off. There we go. Now it shouldn't get the dirty bit message. You dirty, dirty bit. Alright, let's start looking at a couple games. Alright, let's talk a little Game Boy Advance, shall we? This is a definitely acceptable Game Boy Advance emulator. It's not perfect. It's not going to run everything. It's definitely not going to run like Duke Nukem 3D very well. But it does run things fairly decently. And what I'm showing you Donkey Kong for, or King of Swing, is that you can use at least both the shoulder buttons at exactly the same time, and that's a requirement for this. And there's a lot of devices that will not run this game because of it, because you cannot do that move, and it's required for this game. So as far as Game Boy Advance goes, you know, if you don't expect too much out of it, you're going to be fine. Also, let's take a moment to crank up the sound. It can get pretty loud, but it does sound tinny. The other thing is, when you rest your thumb on the deck of it, yeah, you can see it has a tremendous effect on the volume. So just something to note if you're a person who tends to leave their thumb here like I do when I'm not actively using it. See, when you're playing, it kind of gets like that. Alright, let's go on. Let's talk some SNES. Super Nintendo is basically in the same same box as Game Boy Advance is. And some games run really, really good, some don't. The SuperCharger games run particularly bad. Don't try running Star Fox on this, it just is terrible. But games like Phalanx, this runs really well. Many of the fighters run well. It's not bad. It's not perfect, but not bad. And as Jerison mentioned, the sound is scaled down a little bit to make it run a little bit faster. I'm not having any problems with speed though. It does run pretty well, except of course when it doesn't, and that's kind of what you end up with this kind of emulator. Now, I am going to note that if I hit this top button up here, I can go into the menu and I can save state. All the games have this in one form or another. The sad part about it is that the order of the menus are all different. It's not standardized, so it's sometimes a little bit different from game to game, trying to use the same settings, like load and save state. They might be in a sub menu on one emulator, even though they're on the main menu here. So just something to note, but it's nice that they included the feature. We're gonna go on. Sega Master System. This is Fantasy Zone, of course, which is one of the prettier games on the system. Everything on the Sega Master System seemed to run pretty much just fine. Had an occasional slowdown here and there, but that was unusual. Also found that every once in a while the sound seems a little bit off on it, but other than that, it's a fine way to play Sega Master System games. I think the Sega Master System was a little bit underrated. It was quite a bit of fun back in the day, and I did actually own one, I think probably in the late 80s. I thought it was okay. Boy, this game really looks good, and it's aged well. Let's go on. And here we have James Pond, Operation Robocod, running on the Sega Genesis. You're gonna kind of get tired of me saying this, but emulation on this is, of course, a mixed bag. It works really well sometimes, and other times it's really not the best. That said, the sound's not too bad on this. It does sound pretty good. As far as Mr. Robocod here goes, the Genesis version really isn't the best version of this. I would say if you're going to play a console version of this game, definitely try out the Super Nintendo version, which is quite a bit superior to this. I mean, the color is just way better. And it's not the fault of the Genesis, it's just that the port for this one isn't that great. It plays well though, so there's no problem playing it. It's just that it doesn't look as good. If you got a Amiga, that's a really good version of it too. But you gotta put up with the press up to jump thing, as I recall. Oh no, I don't think you did. I think you could press a button. Oh man, why do I say stuff like that? I can't back that up. I cannot remember. It's been a long time since I played the Amiga version. Another interesting version of this game is on the Game Boy Advance. It's quite a bit different from either the Genesis or the Super Nintendo version. So, if you enjoy yourself some Robocod... Why am I jumping on that snake? Anyway, if you enjoy yourself some Robocod, and you finished this one, you can try out the Game Boy Advance and get some new levels. Pretty cool. Alright, let's go on. I love that not only does this have an Atari 2600 emulator, but it has an Atari 2600 emulator that runs SuperCharger games. If you don't know what a SuperCharger is, it adds a few K to your Atari 2600, but adding a few K of RAM to your Atari 2600 is like adding 50 times the RAM that it originally had, which means it can run more complex and better games. I like Rapid Transit. It's pretty darn good. Come on. Nothing like a game that rips off not just Frogger, but Q*bert as well. Sweet. Here we have Air Zonk on the Turbografx 16, or PC Engine if you're from anywhere other than the United States. This is one of the most underrated systems of all time, at least it was in its day. It's having its heyday now. Now people are figuring it out, but it's one of my probably top 3 favorite consoles of all time. I really absolutely love it. Had a lot of original games for it. A lot of just great content that went largely unnoticed by a lot of people. Yeah, I can kind of understand. At the time, there was the Super Nintendo around and the Genesis were around. And graphically, this isn't quite up to that level, but the games, it's all about the games. And the games on here are amazing. By the way, the emulation on this is pretty darn good. I really like playing Turbografx 16 games on here. The D-pad, if I have not noted before, seems to be working just fine. I had some concerns about it, but it is working really really okay. And so are the buttons. So that's nice. Alright, let's go on. Alright, welcome to the MAME emulator, which, despite what you're seeing here, is actually pretty good. But I wanted to point out that if you're playing 8-bit games, it's really very good for 8-bit games, like the old 80s games. But once you start getting the 16-bit era, sometimes stuff runs really good and sometimes it doesn't. But I was going to talk about a pet peeve of mine, and it is this. Why is it that dual stick shooters on these emulators are always mismapped? I mean, always. I mean, yeah, I can remap them, and I will, but it's really just annoying as heck to have to remap them, especially when it always seems to work perfectly on the PC, and I never have to do that with it. Just weird. Anyway, there we go. There's Smash TV. Here's Snow Brothers, also running on MAME. And it plays just fine. Just wanted to show you something that runs halfway decent, unlike Smash TV. It's great playing classics on this handheld. Really, it's fun. You know what? I saw this level in the mobile version of this, and I think I said it looked compressed, but you know what? It looks like this on here too. Aren't I a fool? Let's look at NEOGEO real quick. Alright, here we go with some Neo Mr. Do. And you might be wondering why I'm not running this game in MAME, and that's because MAME really doesn't do as good of a job as the dedicated NEOGEO emulator does. Boy, that was a long pause there. But anyway, the NEOGEO emulator just does a better job, and things seem to run really well on it. There's an occasional lag or delay there, but it's really not something that's going to ruin the experience. And yet another thing that I really enjoy running on this handheld. Absolutely play Neo Mr. Do. It's freaking great. Ever wonder what a Poké Mini game looked like? Well, it looks like this. I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. What the? Come on. Come on. Get in that hole. There we go. Just want to see what happens if I get it in the other... Here. Come on. Get in there. Nope. It's gonna... Here we go. Yes! Winner. Winner. Chicken. Wait, I didn't win. Oh. Alright, let's look at the PlayStation. Don't let Rampage World Tour here fool you. This is definitely not the best PlayStation emulator in the world. Many games, in fact I'd say most games, don't really run at a playable rate. But every once in a while you run into something like Rampage here that runs really pretty darn good. There's a lot of shooters that run fairly decent too on it. So... you know, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know how much you should really expect out of this tiny little device and PlayStation emulation, but I'm happy it runs a little bit, so that's okay. And what the heck, I could play Rampage World Tour all day. Because it's a great freaking game. Alright, let's wrap things up. Darn it, would he hit that? Anyway, let's wrap things up and get to the verdict.
The verdict on the Pocket Go. The Pocket Go is a good example of why I like to take a long time to do my impressions videos. If I would have just popped this out of the box and reviewed it to get it out fast, it would have gotten a huge thumbs down. The default firmware on here is quite honestly horrible. You are going to want to flash it. However, the general design and construction of it are pretty nice, even though these shoulders are a little bit chintzy feeling. They work just fine, and the D-pad surprised me with how good it worked. as did the buttons. They work just fine, like the fact they have a volume control knob. Now, let's get to some of the negatives. Emulation is kind of all over the board. It can be really good and really bad on the same emulator. That's not that abnormal for this kind of device, but it's something to note. Also note, they still do not have video out working as of the recording of this video. So, unless you're using the default firmware, which I didn't test it, so I'm not 100% sure even the default firmware has video out working, so if it's a feature you want, you're going to want to look somewhere else. However, the size of it, even being just this little bit smaller than the RS-97, makes it a lot easier to put in the pocket. I do find that people react to it a little bit more positively than they do to this, even though this is quite honestly a little bit better device. They seem to like the form and the feel of it. People want to touch it and play with it, and that's a big deal if you like to share your games around. One last note I want to make is that there is a little bit of light leak around the edges of the screen, and I never could fully get that out of there by repositioning it. So if light leak drives you nuts, this might not be a great choice. You might want to go for this guy, which has a little bit less light leak. Oh, by the way, if you get the clear one of these, it does have a lot of light leak. So this leaks a lot less than the RS-97 original model. All in all, I give the Pocket Go a thumbs up, a cautionary one. It's not a perfect device. However, it is $10 to $20 less than competing devices in the same class. Even though it underperforms them by just a little bit, it's a pretty good value and plays a whole lot of games. And it is fun. So I like it. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in a couple days. Bye!